What's up guys, Brian Elliott here, and today I am starting a 3-part series on the Sony FX3 in 3 different environments. This video is going to be talking about it in a commercial or a corporate environment, how it works, the pros, the cons, comparing it to other cameras that I've used, etc. Part 2 is going to cover it in a narrative filmmaking sense, and part 3 is going to cover it in a live event scenario like fashion shows or weddings. So let's go ahead and just jump right in. So I do want to give a tiny bit of background on the other cameras that I've used and that I'm going to be comparing it to, and those are going to be the GH3, the GH5, the Sony A7 III, the Blackmagic Pocket 4K, and the Sony FX9. So with that out of the way, I need to address a small elephant in the room, and that is the top handle. I will not be talking about the top handle in any of these videos because unfortunately it is a fairly flimsy top handle and broke fairly early on in my using of the FX3. So all of my experience with the FX3 largely is without the XLR top handle because I'm working on getting that fixed. So I'm going to go ahead and cut to the chase here because the first thing people always want to know about is the image quality. And the image quality is fantastic out of this camera. It's very comparable to any other full frame camera that you're going to get, even the FX9. Very similar image quality, very similar to something like the A7 III. You know, it's just a great image. I really can't fault it. It's nice and sharp. It does have maybe a little bit of a digital edge to it that the FX9 doesn't have, or like the Blackmagic cameras don't have, but throwing a black pro mist filter on it or using some different lenses makes a big difference, particularly corporate. I'll just throw on a 1/8 or 1/4 black pro mist filter. So for my corporate and commercial work, I'm typically using the Tamron Holy Trinity, the 17 to 28, 28 to 75, and 70 to 180. As my primary lenses, I may throw in the Sigmas. I have the Sigma 35 and the Sigma 50mm as well. And very, very rarely I'll throw in maybe my couple Rokinon lenses back there, which I've got an 85 and a 24mm. But most of the time, probably 95% of the time, I'm relying largely on autofocus, and the Tamrons are the best autofocus lenses that I own, as well as being zoom lenses, which is great for corporate and commercial because you can quickly grab close-ups and wider shots and you don't have to be switching your focal lengths all the time. Most of the time I've got the 28 to 75 because that covers most of what I need to in a corporate setting, but the autofocus itself works fantastically, especially in a scenario where the client is well lit, like this for example. I shoot a lot of interviews, talking head kind of stuff for corporate and commercial work that I do, and so it works fantastically for that. I generally don't have any issues even if I'm shooting something more action oriented like fitness. Sometimes it will struggle a little bit and get confused if the lighting isn't perfect or if the subject is moving around a lot, but most of the time the autofocus is spot on. So when it comes to the famous low light of the A7S III FX3, in corporate settings I really don't need it because most of the time I'm bringing in lighting or the space is already well lit either with natural light or with the lighting of the office, things like that. So I'm really not working in situations where I need extreme low light. That will come much more into play, and I'll talk more into that in my other videos where I'm going to be talking about narrative filmmaking as well as event filmmaking. Now, when it comes to frame rates, the FX3 is fantastic. It's got 4K up to 120 frames a second, which looks just as good as their 4K 24 frames a second, as well as HD up to 240 frames a second. That honestly doesn't look as good. So typically for my commercial work, I'll only go up to 120 frames a second in 4K. Most of the time, I'm not using 120 frames, but there are some product shots or, you know, things like fitness or action or things like that in corporate commercial sorts of settings where I absolutely love having 120 frames a second. It just makes things that much slower, that much more impactful and intense. I like that as a tool in my arsenal, even though I'm much more using 24 frames or 60 frames a second. In terms of the menus and usability, the FX3 has the new menu system that's also in the A7S3 and the A7 IV, and it's great for a Sony menu. The FX9, the menu system was the bane of that camera. I hated it, but this menu system is much better. You know, I'm also using the A6600 and the A7 III. This menu is much better than those menus, and those menus are much better than the FX9's menu. If you're thinking about coming from something like the Blackmagic cameras, this menu is going to be frustrating to you because Blackmagic just has the most beautiful menu system of any camera on the planet that I have ever used. And so don't expect that level of simplicity and elegance, but for a mirrorless menu or cinema camera menu overall, it's a great, very intuitive menu, even if it has a lot of options and some photo options that kind of get in the way and make it a little messier. When it comes to the setup of the camera and the body, I really like the video-centric design overall. The only thing that I really don't love is that the joystick to change where you're focusing or to, you know, kind of move through the menus or stuff is on the top. Everything else though, I really like where the different buttons are placed, the customizable buttons, the buttons that are labeled as well. That's all feels very intuitive and makes a lot of sense when I'm switching settings, and I haven't really gone through and done huge customizations to the natural place that all of the buttons are. Now, when it comes to rigging, I'm a little bit different than a lot of people. I don't like a cage. None of my cameras except the Blackmagics have had cages. On the FX3, I love that it has the cageless design where it has some more mounting points because I just put a long NATO rail on it, a 100mm NATO rail, and can attach a top handle, can attach a side handle, and can build off of those with like monitors and things like that, so that I don't have to have a full cage, because a lot of times I very quickly like to build it up or strip it down to work on a lot of different environments. If I need to throw it on a Steadicam, I can have it stripped down to the bare bones like you see behind me in, you know, a matter of 15-20 seconds. Or if I need to build it up, I can build it up in under a minute because it's so much more modular and I don't have to be like, take off the cage for the Steadicam and then put that back on. I'm somebody who really likes their camera to have a lot of flexibility. In corporate environments, this really comes into play, especially if, you know, I've got it all built up for interviews and then I need to grab some quick B-roll on my Steadicam. Can do that very quickly because, especially in a corporate commercial environment, time is money. I just did a shoot a few days ago with a fitness professional, and we had like 3 hours to get like 50-60 shots. And I was also working with a photographer, so we were, you know, switching back and forth and taking turns, and like, so we really had to be like on the ball. So being able to have something that I could switch around that quickly was incredibly helpful. So the next thing I want to address briefly is my experience with client perception. I bought the FX9 right before the pandemic, of course, because I wanted to kind of up my perception with clients. You know, big camera, must be more professional, I'll pay higher prices because he has a bigger camera, like all those things that we tell ourselves as filmmakers. But the reality is, I didn't really notice a big uptick with the FX9 in terms of that client perception, and I've noticed zero negative effects of the client perception with the FX3, especially if I build it up with the monitor and stuff like that. People don't really judge that, oh, big camera means better quality. Most of the time working on smaller commercial or corporate productions, they just trust me, they trust the work, and trust that I'll be using the tools that get the job done the best. One huge thing that I'm a big fan of with the FX3 with corporate work is all the different codec options and all the different picture profiles, including S-Cinetone and S-Log3. Most of the time I will shoot in S-Log3 for just the maximum dynamic range, best image, most flexibility, etc., etc. But there's times when maybe I need to do a really fast turnaround, or I don't know if the editor is going to have experience if I'm not the one editing it. So I can just make the profile S-Cinetone and give them something that looks great right out of camera. So if they need to turn it around really fast, I need to turn it around really fast, or the editor does not have that color grading experience or the time to do that, they're gonna get a great looking image right out of the camera. As far as the actual codecs themselves, the XAVC-S, XAVC-HS, and XAVC-I, it's really nice to have those three formats. Typically, for like 95% of what I shoot, I'm using XAVC-S because that's kind of the best balance between file size and image quality and ease of use on my computer, and it looks great. Like, I really have had no complaints about any artifacting or issues with it. If the clients really want something beefier, if it's green screen work or something, XAVC-I is fantastic to have, and XAVC-HS, although I don't really use it, if I needed to record some really long corporate interviews and file size really mattered, I've got that option as well. So that's really nice to have that flexibility and those options so that you're not having to buy so many hard drives when you're shooting bigger corporate type projects, but you've also got the bigger, beefier codecs for the bigger clients. As you could probably tell, I'm pretty positive about this camera for commercial work, even coming from using the FX9 and the Blackmagics and the GH5 and all these cameras for corporate and commercial work. Honestly, the FX3 is my favorite of them. I was a little bit nervous when I sold my FX9 and my GH5. It was like, am I gonna miss these? Am I gonna really miss some of these features? And after roughly 6 months of shooting a lot of corporate and commercial work with the FX3, I really haven't. Like, there hasn't been a time when I'm like, damn, I really wish I had the FX9, or really wish I had the GH5, or I really wish I had the Pocket 4K still. Like, I just haven't had those scenarios where I have buyer's remorse. This has really been the first camera that I've owned that's felt like, this is what I want. This is the camera that I'm truly content with. I kind of keep an eye on the market and see what's new and what's coming out and what's cool, and I haven't seen anything that's been like, oh man, I really want that and maybe I should sell the FX3. And even like looking at something like the FX6 that's even like bigger, beefier, cooler, I don't really have that FOMO. I feel like the FX3 is a really wonderful camera. I really enjoy it. It kind of ticks all the boxes for how I like to work on corporate and commercial. So I really don't have that FOMO, that regret, and I can really wholeheartedly, honestly recommend this camera. So in part 2, I'm going to be talking about how it works for shooting short films, narrative type projects, and so definitely consider subscribing for that, and I'll catch you all then.